government, forget whether or not they are qualified. That actually is the only qualification, is that you pray to the orange Jesus, which is known as Trump. And so that's what we have in Patel. It doesn't come down to whether or not he has any law enforcement experience. It doesn't come down to if he understands anything about the FBI. What it comes down to is a guy who was so upset because he got caught being the criminal that he is, and they had the audacity to go after him and to actually prosecute him. And now what he's deciding that he wants to do is he truly wants to weaponize the government, a claim that he continuously projected onto this administration. But here's the deal. The big question is whether or not the current FBI director is going to step down, another person that he actually put into that position, because he still has time on the clock and doesn't necessarily have to leave.
Now, let's turn to the economy, where experts have warned that Trump's promised tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods and a hike on Chinese products will hurt the economy and blow up inflation, particularly in import-reliant states like Texas, where you serve from. You've warned the American people to buckle up for economic pain under Trump's plan. But millions of Americans voted for Trump, who campaigned on these tariffs. Even if their economic pain deepens because of them, the tariffs that is, will they turn away from him now?
You know, I have no idea, but I will say that there should definitely be some folk that decide, you know what, maybe that wasn't the best idea to either stay at home and not go and vote for Kamala Harris, or that I decided to get up and go and vote for this guy who was promising tariffs. Because I have seen where people have said, well, wait a minute, I thought the tariffs just meant that the other countries were going to pay something. I didn't realize that this was going to impact me. And I think that it's important that the American people see that we saw the Prime Minister for Canada go and speak to him. And basically you have, our friends from up north as well as our friends down south in Mexico seemingly trying to educate the guy that is run on being this great businessman. But what I try to remind people of over and over again is that this guy isn't allowed to operate a business in the state of New York because he's actually a terrible business person. And this, honestly, this idea, this ploy to throw tariffs onto everything, I don't even understand how Elon can stand for it, because his precious little Tesla, while they may be made in right here in Texas nowadays, here's the reality. The Tesla has components of it that are not made in the United States, just like almost every single thing that we have. Not to mention when we start to talk about agriculture and our food. And the reality is that this is going to impact every facet of our lives if someone doesn't get a hold of Trump and tell him to chill out on all of this pain that he's about to inflict as it relates to the tariffs.
Well, as a New Yorker, I can tell you that we never thought he was a good businessman. But states across the country are bracing for Trump's promised deportation of millions of immigrants. Some are preparing to fight back. Others are already accommodating Trump, like Texas, which is home to about 1.6 million undocumented immigrants, and where Republican leaders are pumping money and resources into making the state the center of mass deportation plan. But less clear is whether those leaders have considered the economic impacts on this proposed purge on Texas, which generates billions in taxes from undocumented residents, many of whom work in the state's construction, farming, and service industries. Congresswoman, you serve on House Agricultural Committee, and you said you think Trump will drop this plan because it will hurt those sectors, farming especially. You think he's bluffing?
Yeah, I think that this is a guy who has half-baked ideas, right? He gets out there, he says something, and then people go crazy and they say, yes, we like it. and he has not thought it through, right? And I think that this is another one of those half-baked ideas where he's saying, yes, I'm going to deport everybody because, you know, right now there is a fear as it relates to the base that supported him, because we know that white people overwhelmingly supported him. And so he's trying to make his base feel comfortable by saying, hey, listen, I'm going to get rid of all of these people of color. That does include the woman that is cleaning your home. That does include the people that you use as your nannies. That does include those people that you are waiting to build your custom home. I just want y'all to understand that the people that are making sure that that food that you can continue to complain about the prices of, that is in the grocery store, that they are the ones that are out there working the farm. And I think that once they say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that this may mean that somebody else got to go and work the farm because I'm not going to go send little Johnny out there. I think that once they understand truly what this means, then they'll end up pivoting or blaming it on someone else. But this is a half-baked idea that is going to cost us a lot of upfront dollars, and then it's going to cost us a lot economically.
Now, I have to ask you about this while there's time. I'm so inspired that that photo over your shoulder of Shirley Chisholm. You know, I was youth director of her campaign for president in 72. I was just 17 going to 18 years old. And she'd be very proud of you, I believe. You took issue last month. By the way, it was the 100th anniversary of her birth yesterday.
Yes.
You took issue last month with your House Republican colleagues referring to diversity, equity, and inclusion practices as oppression, as they promoted a bill in a markup called Dismantle DEI. On Martin Luther King holiday, the same day of the inauguration, we're having a rally and march about that in Washington. You went viral for the takedown. Still, the bill advanced the House Oversight Committee. If it becomes a law, this would effectively close all federal DEI offices and programs. Congressman, how far do they intend to go with this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no way that President Joe Biden would ever sign this into law, so they can get it out the House, they can get it out the Senate. They actually can't get it out the Senate because the Democrats still control the Senate. But this is a preview of what it looks like to have a Trump trifecta. I fully anticipate that this is the type of legislation that we will see come back in the 119th, and they will get it through the House. They potentially will get it through a Republican-controlled Senate, and I have no doubts that Donald Trump would actually sign it into law. So for everyone who is a person of color that thought that this was your guy, I just want y'all to know how they feel about you. And what they are saying right now is not only that white men are being oppressed, including my colleagues that are sitting in Congress right now because they were whining about being oppressed in that particular hearing. But, you know, he has talked about reparations for white folk.
Yeah,
something that if black people even start to mention reparations, everybody wants to lose their minds. So I just want to be clear that we are flipping everything on its head. Part of this started when they decided that they did not want to teach our real history in the classrooms so that people can say, oh, no, it is the white man that has been oppressed. But I had to read the literal definition of oppression because they feel as if just because there is an office that wants to promote diversity, not to promote that someone is going to have supremacy, but diversity. Right. They feel as if that is oppression anytime a person of color is being treated with equity in this country.
And Trump literally talked about reparations for whites. I might add a lot of white women businesses and others benefited from DEI. And it really was put into real fast track when the Trump-stacked Supreme Court outlawed affirmative action. Thank you for being with us. Always good to talk to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Now to the topic of the new leadership of the Democratic National Committee, set to vote on its new chair on February 1st. Joining me now is one of the contenders for the job, the state of Wisconsin's Democratic Party chair, Ben Wickler. I want to mention that we already had on this show two other candidates, Martin O'Malley, the former Maryland governor, and Ken Martin, who leads the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. To start, you announced today that you are entering the race to head the DNC in order to, quote, unite, fight, and win. You have led the Wisconsin Democratic Party since 2019. What is your vision for the future of the party? A behind-the-scenes fundraiser or someone steering the direction of the party?
Thanks so much for having me on, Reverend Sharpton, and it's an honor to be with your audience in a moment of crisis where we're facing total Republican domination of our federal government, even though this was one of the narrowest elections in the last 100 years. And many voters who cast ballots to bring down prices don't want what Trump wants to do. So I think we need both. I think we need to have a national party where the chair communicates and supports a ton of other great communicators to go out and fight back against the Trump administration's plan to dismantle support for healthcare for working people across this country and give trillions of dollars to billionaires who don't need it, who financed his campaign. We need to fight back against that and channel energy into supporting work in every state across the country to fight back against right-wing extremism and unite the party, building a big tent coalition across race and ethnicity, gender and geography in rural areas and suburbs and cities and small towns alike, to win down ballot races that have enormous consequences, both for people in their states and across the country. That's the idea with Unite, to bring us all together, to fight up and down the ballot in every state and nationally, and by doing that, to win.
Now, after a national loss like the one this November, a lot of analysts, strategists, and pundits have been pointing blame at what exactly went wrong for the Democrats this year. In your perspective, as you said, it was very closest we've seen in decades. What lessons can the Democrats take away from this past election?
We're at the beginning of learning all the things that we could have done better and more powerfully that we can apply going forward. But one that really jumps out is that for so many Americans, they had support from the pandemic era recovery programs. People remember the checks that they got with Trump's name. They might remember the child tax credit that President Biden supported, other things that came and then went away. That left them trying to find the funds to be able to meet their basic needs, how to fill a prescription and buy groceries at the same time as prices went up. And what we've seen everywhere in the world and in the United States is that those hardest hit by inflation were the people most likely to shift towards whatever party was out of power because they wanted change. Now, we also know that the more people heard Vice President Harris's message, especially in battleground states, and most of all in Wisconsin, where we had the smallest gap in the election, those who heard Harris's message were more likely to support Harris. Those who did not hear from either candidate were more likely to go for Trump. And so the big thing that we need to figure out as a party is how to reach people who have other priorities, other things happening in their lives, often folks of modest means across race and geography, to ensure that they hear the Democratic message that we are fighting for working people. We're the party that stands up to the far-right billionaire special interests and delivers for working families so that they're able to make ends meet. We fight for freedom. We fight for the fundamental dignity and respect that every person deserves. And we fight for working people against those who are trying to rip them off. If we can get that message out, which means communicating in more places through our words and our actions, then we're going to win elections in 2025, 6, 7, and 8. That is the job.
Now, the Democrats are set to find themselves in a tough situation heading into next year when they will be out of the White House and in the minority in both the House and the Senate. Should Democrats be looking for ways to resist the incoming administration and its leadership on Capitol Hill, or search for opportunities for bipartisan compromise?
We know what Trump plans to do because he's been signaling it through his campaign and Project 2025, which he totally disavowed and is now getting ready to implement. And the starting giant battle he wants to wage is a chance to rip off the American public, to give trillions of